This week we have a special guest, Matt N3NWV from Parks on the Air, talking about the 2023 plaque event, updates from Winter Field Day, the latest news from ARRL, and much more. Hello and welcome to the Ham Radio Guy, and good morning, afternoon, whatever time you might be listening to this podcast. It's your host, Marvin, W0MET. We're bringing you the latest of topics, news, and information each week right here to this show. So please hit that subscribe button and listen to us here on the podcast. You can find us on Apple and Podbean, different podcast forums. I'd like to go ahead and welcome into the show this morning, Matt Neere, N3NWV. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Marvin. Yeah, and nobody gets that last name right. You did pretty good. Oh. I had to move back from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh to get the analogy to work, so it's okay.
Well, how do you pronounce that last name?
It's Here with an H, and I have to tell people it's like John Deere tractors, which works great here in Western Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, they looked at me like I had three heads. Like, what's a tractor?
Well, of course, gotta love that sound. Well, good. We had talked a little bit here in the pre-show here, but tell me a little bit about yourself. And, I guess we were saying you got started in POTA back in like 2018, and then now you're kind of a communications director, public relations for POTA. So kind of how did you get to that point?
Yeah, so I got into HF with the QRP rig at the bottom of Solar Cycle 24, which was not working real well, frankly. And then POTA came along and provided the activators who really, really, really wanted my QSO and were willing to fish my terrible signal out of the noise. And it's funny how HF is more fun when you are actually making contacts.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I got into POTA pretty hard back in 2018, 2019. I'd have to go and look. And at the time, I was working pretty hard on my own YouTube channel, which is an eclectic mix of who knows what. I have to tell people my hobby is collecting hobbies, and that seems to be what my channel reflects.
My wife would probably say the same.
Yeah, right. I think it's common affliction. And I made a video about configuring AC log from Scott Davis, N3FGP, for POTA
Great
use.
Great program.
Which caught, I love it. And Scott he's a stand-up guy.
For sure.
So it's a real pleasure to work with. Anyway, Jason Johnson, W3 Alpha Alpha X-Ray, who's the administrator for POTA, caught that video. I think he might have actually used it to set up his own computer, and then contacted me, and we started talking about the need for just video-based training content for the Parks on the Air organization. We've had written docs forever and ever and ever, but nobody enjoys reading documentation. And they should, in our case. I think it's really, really good, and especially now that it's been moved over to the new POTA.app site, it's in fantastic shape. The doc team has done a great job. But we like to be all-encompassing where we can. So written content and video content. And I sort of backburnered my own channel. It's been probably going on a year now since I posted anything on my personal channel to start working on making some content for POTA. And then as the organization has grown, we've had people show up and say, well, your YouTube presence is great, your Facebook presence is great, but POTA also needs a Discord server and an Instagram feed and a Twitter account. And it's just the world of social media as we know it. And I was not going to take on being responsible for all of those platforms, but I was sort of the old guy in the room. So what Jason asked me to do was just serve sort of as a coordinator, make sure that when we get to things like this plaque event, that we don't put a confusing and conflicting message out there, so that when we do release information, it's actually helpful for people.
Right. Makes sense. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's a good gig, and I have to say, every time I get invited to something like a podcast or a live stream, that I'm really very fortunate to be one of a handful of sort of public faces for what has grown to be a very large organization, well over 100 people volunteering to help with the administration of POTA. So I try really hard not to take more credit than is due me, because I'm sort of just the messenger, right? There's other people doing all the real work.
Right. So when it changed from having all the volunteers that are out there having to email your log to, K0 at, parksontheair.com to upload your log back, call it maybe a year ago, to now you just upload your own log. Did that really change much for staffing?
Well, it shifted the workload.
Okay.
The regional coordinators are the people who were behind the curtain of email your log to kwhatever at parksontheair.com. And the regional coordinators spent a lot of time working on importing those logs. Now that is a self-service process, the regional coordinators have a lot more time to focus on helping with discussions about, well, is this a park? Is this not a park? Whatever, working with the mapping coordinators or helping to coach someone who's new to Parks on the Air through what they need to do. There's still plenty for the regional coordinators to do, but it did free up a lot of time for them to, do things other than logs, obviously. Although it is still an option if you really, really have no idea how to use the POTA website, which is hard to imagine, but there's a couple folks who still do it the old way.
Definitely some people that still struggle with it for sure.
Yeah, well, it's with 35,000 people in the program, you're bound to run into a wide range of skill sets and available technologies and whatever else. So that's okay. Where we've seen a big increase in workload is the help desk. So there's now a button next to, I uploaded a log and either it went poorly or it went fine and I found out I had a mistake later. I need to click this button and generate a help desk ticket and get them to, add, delete, change, do something with that log. And that process used to only be visible to the regional coordinator and the person who had submitted the log. They took care of that sort of privately via email. Well, now it's a help desk ticket that the whole of the help desk and admin staff sees. And frankly, the number of them is a little disturbing. We certainly appreciate people uploading their logs in a timely fashion, but it's okay if it's 10 minutes later, right? Yeah. Eyeball it at least once before you hit the submit button. I fat fingered a call or something like that down in the weeds. Maybe you don't find out about for a while, but when you were at a park in Colorado and the uploader says you're uploading a park for Maine, you ought to notice that before you hit the OK button.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know there's been one where I've fat fingered a number and, definitely noticed it myself, where I didn't notice it until after the fact. And I went back and looked at my log and I was like, I never worked a park in Colorado, and it's like, all right, let me go figure out what park that number is and correct that. And I've had to email the rep, like the 0 rep back and say, hey, I realized this should have been park 0673 instead of 6703 or something.
Yeah, well, and with the old process, that was real easy to do because you didn't get any instantaneous validation of the log file.
No.
The email system would let you email. You could email your grandma's recipe for tuna casserole, and the email system would take it.
Yeah.
The log uploader, as soon as you drop the file on there, it does the immediate parsing, and it says, okay, here's the park that I think you were at, and here's the number of QSOs that I think you had. Even before you hit the upload button, it does that level of parsing. So I don't want to come off as like this is some humongous problem. We have thousands of logs that get uploaded successfully, no problem. And it's tens or dozens where we have to go back and make corrections. So it's pretty small percentage. Almost everybody's doing a fantastic job. Just to understand that if you're in a hurry and you make a careless mistake, there's someone on the other end who has to burn volunteer time to help you fix it. So spend that time wisely, please.
Well, good. I think that's a great message to send out to people, and definitely let them know. That's great to share that, and thanks for coming from the Parks on the Air side and giving that information. But it's my understanding there's also kind of a big event that's coming up here. June 3rd and 4th is my date, I believe, for the annual plaque event award.
Correct. The annual plaque event, which has morphed and changed, but is sort of the same. Yeah, we've had this plaque event since 2018.
It's been going that long.
Yeah, it's not really entirely new for 2023.
I think just kind of revamped a little bit.
What's new for 2023 is that we have sort of cut the cord, if you will. We have realized that this plaque event is just going to grow and has a life of its own, and for an assortment of reasons needs a set of rules that is slightly different from day-to-day Parks on the Air. So rather than it being, in years past, it was a kind of a sort of a support your parks weekend on steroids, if you will. It was still a part of POTA.
Sure.
2023, this is a separate event sponsored by the Parks on the Air organization. There is a clear divide between POTA and day-to-day POTA, which continues unchanged, marches on, and frankly can be done as is even on the plaque event weekend, versus the plaque event weekend is now a separate standalone thing, much like Winterfield Day or Field Day or 13 Colonies or anything else that is a distinct event.
Yes, those are some great events too.
Yeah, they are.
So, there's several awards that are given to that. What are some of the awards that are given out on this plaque event? The
plaque categories remain unchanged from previous years, with one notable exception that we'll get to. For the most part, they're what you would think they would be. There are awards for activators and hunters that are they're largely the same. It's who worked the most parks and who made the most contacts. Total, phone, CW data. And for the activators, there's the additional category of the rover. Like, how many parks did you go to?
Wow.
Which obviously doesn't make any sense for hunters, because hunters don't have to submit logs.
Right.
A hunter could hunt from 100 locations and there'd be no way for us to know. So that rover category does not exist for hunters, but everything else is pretty much the same. And we have dedicated categories for the various IARU regions. And the category for IARU Region 2 explicitly excludes the lower 48 states of the U.S.
Okay.
It's designed to POTA is very much an international thing. We're in, I think, 140 countries now, so it's definitely not U.S. centric anymore. But the preponderance of the QSOs do get made by one side of the QSO, at least, is a U.S. operator. So we decided to exclude them from the IARU region categories, because they already have not an unfair advantage. It's based on participation, but they have a pretty good shot at the most whatever's plaques already. So it's a playing field leveling tactic.
Right. There's I know there's people that will, literally go out and activate a park every day. And then there's, other people who have been trying to get the, kind of the support behind it to go out and literally see how many parks they can activate in a 24-hour period. It's like some of these people make it a competition nowadays in some ways. It gets to be almost kind of crazy in some ways.
Yeah. So again, for the plaque event itself, there is obviously there's first place prizes for this, so it's a competitive event.
Oh, definitely.
And there are definitely already people planning, particularly the folks who want that rover category. They want that plaque for I went and activated the most parks. That takes planning, a significant amount of planning to lay out your route and the logistical support, because obviously we want everybody to stay safe. We don't want anybody out there driving from park to park on no sleep for 39 hours or something like that. So there's a lot of planning that goes into that one.
Yeah, I mean, I know people will literally like make designated, almost like big QSO parties. They will, if they're rovers, they will set their vehicle up and they will like have their HF rig in their vehicle, and they have like maybe like a Wolf River coil in the back, and all they have to do is get out of the vehicle, pull out the tripod for the Wolf River coil, screw the antenna on top, and they are, run the cable to the vehicle, to the radio, and they're back on the air operating again. They'll make their 10 or 15 contacts, go break that antenna down, throw it back in their vehicle in the trunk or in the back of the truck, and they are back onto the next park, and they're driving to where they need to go. So,
yeah,
quick setups, and, how small can I make this and how quick can I make it,
Sure. Well, and POTA doesn't even really require you get out of the vehicle. You could have a mobile rig. You could have a ham stick stuck on top of the thing or mounted permanently. And if you want to set up in the back of an RV with an antenna on it, and you have a fleet of drivers, right? Somebody to drive, drivers in shifts, so you don't have to drive tired. People do all sorts of crazy things.
For sure.
But having said that, the two categories that we added this year are Rookie Activator and Rookie Hunter. We did that specifically so that all these people who have joined Parks on the Air, and the growth it continues to be sort of logarithmic. It's really incredible to see how many people have joined.
You said there was 35,000 pre-show. You guys said there's 35,000 actual activators.
There are north of 35,000 people signed up for Parks on the Air at this point. So 35,000 plus people that actually have an account in the Parks on the Air system. However, if you go and look at the QSO database, what you find out is that there are over 350,000 unique call signs in the POTA database. So these are people who were spinning the dial and heard someone calling CQ and answered them or whatever. Right. So they aren't necessarily active participants in Parks in the Air, but they're available, right? They could be. So we have an awful lot of folks that could potentially join the organization yet.
So,
and as they do...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Marvin.
So I say for the rookie event, they have never activated a park, and this is the first time out. They'll be considered the rookie for that.
Their first activation has to have been on or after June. I don't know if we're going to count it as the second or the third. It's within 365 days of the event. So if your first POTA QSO as a hunter was June 2nd, 2022 or later, you qualify as a rookie hunter. Oh. If your first ever POTA activation was June 2nd, 2022 or later, you qualify as a rookie activator.
So this is actually going back to 2022. It's not actually
within a year.
Within the year.
Yeah.
So it's not going
a year
back
previous to the event.
So it's not going actually back to the starting of, like, if it's June, I think it's June 3rd and 4th. I think it was, or is it June 2nd and 3rd?
It's June 3rd and 4th. UTC is, and that's in. So for those of us here in the States, it actually starts Friday evening, June 2nd.
Right. So it's not just actually being a first-time activator or hunter that weekend. It's actually going back 1 year. And if this is your For anytime since June of last year, you would then qualify for that event.
Yeah, if you have been in POTA in whatever role, hunter or activator, for a year or less, then you qualify as a rookie. And I should note, this is the first year that we've had that category, and it's the first year that we're running the event as a separate standalone event from POTA, right, with the rule changes and whatever else. And so we honestly expect to learn some stuff. We expect to get some feedback from the user community on the changes are positive, the changes are negative. You should also make this change, whatever. No promises that the Plaque event 2024 is going to look exactly like the Plaque event 2023. If we need to make some more tweaks, we will. But for this year, at least, one of our sort of guiding principles was change it as little as possible from day-to-day POTA and previous Plaque events. So we made... For some reason,
that seems like a deja vu type of thing. As we were kind of discussing again pre-show, I'm the president of the Winter Field Day and director for that now, and we took it over last June. We had about 6 months to get our crap together to figure out, exactly what we needed to do, what was all involved, rebuild the website, et cetera. Yeah. And it was like, all right, this is how we're going to kind of keep it the same this year. But 2024 may look completely different from what 2023 is, from what we want to be able to do with that. So I know your feelings around that. I think we share some similarities there in that regard. So
Sure. Well, and it's the realities of when this whole thing is a hobby run by volunteers.
Absolutely.
So it needs to be fun. It needs to be fun for the people participating. It needs to be, at least not a major headache for the people running it.
I think there's a few of those, but
well, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. One of my best friends is a pastor, and he always shakes his head at how upset people can get over a volunteer activity in the name of the Lord, right? And this person is off in the corner crying. So I don't think it's just ham radio.
Yeah, I suppose not. People will find a way to complain about something. So
that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah,
so
that's what we found out too from Winter Field Day side. It's like you're going to please some, you're not going to make everybody happy, but we've seen people write emails and saying, hey, your events are great. We love it. Keep it going. You're doing a great job. And other people going, I'm never doing this again. I'm done with Winter Field Day. And it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. It's just like we're doing everything we can, but I'm sure it's the same way with parks. I'm sure you get people complaining and writing about things and why can't you do this or why isn't this having issues.
Well, here's a great simple example that I think I can share without stepping on anybody's toes. The reality of life at this point is that we've run out of weekends.
Yeah.
You cannot schedule anything on any weekend without it conflicting with something else.
Oh, for sure.
Because there's only 52 weekends and there's more than 52 things going on. So the very first feedback that we got when we announced the new Plaque event was just a stream of, how could you possibly have picked those dates? Didn't you know you conflict with this and you conflict with that? And it's also, oh my Lord, it's the, Martian Contact Fest or whatever. and I get it. Everybody has their thing that they're into. And so it's really, really, really important to them. And if they have a conflict between two or three things that they're into, it's a problem for them. I get it. I have two teenage kids, so we've got conflicts daily.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
You just have to work through it. You have to understand that it's just the reality of the calendar. There's not enough time for everything to get its own slot. Yeah, my apologies if our event steps on your event, but life is full of choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a contest. I think if you look at the ARRL calendar, there's just about a contest every weekend of some sort going on. I mean, there's a big this March March 3rd and 4th here. There's a big DX expedition or a DX contest this weekend is what's going on. So, I was just talking to Spain and Italy and Portugal and everything last night. It was just blowing up in the 20 meters. It was crazy. But I don't think you'll find many weekends where you can't have some conflict with something. And, it's not if it's going to be my daughter's wedding that weekend. I can't participate, and it's going to be something. But
right, exactly. And that's even just the conflicts with the published ham radio calendar. There's there's other ham radio calendars like Ham Fests. And some club had an activity and whatever else that we don't even have any visibility into. Somebody will write in and say, do you know you scheduled your event on our Ham Fest weekend? No, I didn't know that. And I wouldn't have done anything different anyway. What do you want me to do?
For sure.
Then you start throwing in people's personal conflicts, and it's just the reality of things. It is when it is. It ain't moving. Do your best. And if this year doesn't work out for you, there's always next year.
Absolutely. So my question would be: so the plaque event is that weekend. So when will results be handed out from there?
The logs are due by the 18th.
Okay, so you got to submit them within about 2 weeks, then roughly. So,
you've got about 2 weeks to submit the logs, and we don't have a date set for it. Last year we did an awards show live stream on the POTA YouTube channel. I expect we're going to do that again. Okay, and it's actually good that we're having this conversation because that hadn't crossed my mind. And it probably I need to start planning that today. So, stay tuned. We'll put up a placeholder on the POTA YouTube channel for the live stream when we'll give you at least a week's notice that that's going to happen. And we'll announce Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else that we're going to have it. I'm hoping that it doesn't take us more than another 2 weeks to sort through the logs and whatever else. But we do have some logic changes this year, 1 or 2 new rules for the plaque event. And there needs to be an audit, right, of the automation will run through and it'll say, okay, here's the people that get the plaques. Well, somebody needs to eyeball that and make sure that it's correct. Because some of the logic is brand spanking new. Same thing from Winterfield Day. We give about a month to submit the logs, and then that was just done March 1st, so just 3 days ago. And so now it's kind of getting the database put together, configuring everything. And I'm saying we're going to try and get it out by April 1st this year. We have a really good guy who's doing our website that was also doing our database and back end stuff, and we should have all those stats out here, I would say within the the late of the month or early April, so within a month or so. But if you do some of the other contests, I think 13 it wasn't 13, it was 13 colonies this last year. I think it was 3 or 4 months before I even got my certificate. And summer field day results are usually in December, and so I was just kind of curious about time frame around that. So if you guys are doing a 2-week turnaround, that's pretty quick. If all goes well, right. I personally would like to get the results out there before we get into the 4th of July weekend and the 13 Colonies event.
Right.
Because if you wait, we're not going to do it during 13 Colonies. And then there's a week or 2 in there, but there's field day is going to happen and people are going to be looking at field day data. And I don't know. It seems like it shouldn't take that long. Once everything's in the database on the morning of the 19th, if the automation works, we'll have the results.
Well, there you said it right there. If it works.
Yeah, well, that's right. And in future years, hopefully we won't have to make many more rule changes. We'll get this logic vetted. We'll know it works. And we really will have the results within a day or 2 of the deadline to submit logs. But this year we have to go through that manual validation step. And again, volunteers trying not to make it a giant headache. And so that's going to take some time.
Yeah. And we appreciate all the volunteers from Parks on the Air and even on the winter field day side that we have to do our log checking on the back end and all the database stuff. So it is a lot of work by them. And so, just everyone out there, I just, say thank you to all of them that are able to volunteer and help out with those hours and jobs that they do to support things like, winter field day, summer field day, the 13 colonies, the Route 66, the Parks on the Air, all those organizations that, you have fun with, has a load of back end stuff that they have to deal with to get the information to you.
Yeah. And one of these days, somebody is going to take the initiative to start like an open source software project. Because a lot of the code is either the rules are different from event to event to event, but the basic concept of I need to collect logs, validate logs, apply a rule set, and spit out some winners is pretty lather, rinse, repeat.
It is.
Seems like something where we ought to be able to create a utility that does this and share it across organizations.
Because you're either using Corbillo format or you're using a ADF file. You're right. The data's there either way. It's just now what source and dump can you push it into. We pushed to contest.com, but I think we're kind of going to the point where we may just create our own database dump and you dump it right into our own server. So,
well, POTA has the ongoing day-to-day, right? The achievements that you can unlock just as a regular POTA operator. So this is not contest stuff. This is along the lines of worked all states or DXCC or something. You just want to track your progress against some arbitrary goal, and you're really only competing with yourself.
Right.
So we have to have all that logic in place all the time anyway. And so the platform is there for us to do the analysis of the logs and come up with the results for the plaque event. It's just that the rules are slightly different. And I guess we ought to go through that. There's two big changes to the rules for the plaque event compared to normal day-to-day POTA. So the first thing we had to implement in the logic, I say had to, it's a work in progress. It's not done yet. The first thing we're working on is, we have decided not to count the park multipliers, what we classically call the ENFR in POTA lingo.
Oh, yeah.
So you can go to a spot. There are lots of spots that are multiple parks. There's a park within a park, and a trail goes by, and the statue's a monument, and whatever else. All of that stuff in normal POTA lets you get a multiplier 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, of your QSOs from that spot. Absolutely. And you could still do that. You could still submit it that way if you want to, but for plaque totals, we're only going to count one of them.
I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, that was
that levels the playing field for everybody. Because there's only so many. There's only so many parks that people can go get a 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. And so if for those who can only go to maybe that park that has just kilo dash 1, 2, 3, 4, they can't get a 2 for there, a 3 for there. Right. It levels the playing field for everybody. So I think that's really awesome. So that's a great idea.
We got overwhelmingly positive feedback on that suggested rule change, and nothing is absolute, right? But I would say the bulk of the negative feedback that we got on that suggestion came from one of two places. There's the never change anything no matter what crowd. Change is bad. Change is always bad. Don't change anything.
Right.
Okay. That's not really a reason, but it's a viewpoint. Some people have it. The other crowd that didn't like the rule change was the people who were winning because of the ENFR rule.
Exactly.
I get that, right? That's also a perfectly valid viewpoint. I don't think they're wrong. They just got outvoted.
But if you're on the East Coast, I can go to 2 for parks almost all day long. You're out in Montana, Wyoming or something, and, there's only one park within 100 miles I can go to make this happen. So,
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, and that was the discussion when we went down this road of, okay, if that's our goal, is to level the park access playing field, how far do we go? Do we make it so that every activation has to be an hour minimum to try and normalize the, okay, you can drive to 7 parks in 10 minutes and somebody else has to drive 3 hours to get to 1? That's not fair.
No.
Well, okay, maybe not. But again, we're trying to change as little as possible. And we ultimately decided there was nothing we could do that would make it completely fair across the entire planet. You know, the reality is we don't have any control over where people live or what's a park. So we decided to implement the simple rule on which we got overwhelmingly positive feedback and go with that for this year. And then we'll see moving forward whether anything else needs to be done. Frankly, I'm hoping not, because as the rules get more complex, you just irritate more people and they get harder to implement and do consistently. And as a rule, simple is good.
Oh, absolutely. It's always that way. And I understand that completely from, again, the Winter Field Day side. So,
yeah.
Is that, I guess you said there was two changes to the rules mainly. And
yeah.
Is that,
so one is the elimination of the NFRs and the other is the restriction on the bands that will be counted for plaque totals. Yeah. Yeah. So we have, there's still a couple of folks who don't really want to call this a contest, and you can make a case for that viewpoint, because if you look at a contest, there are still numerous differences between a traditional contest and the POTA event. For instance, the hunters still don't have to submit logs. There's no verification of these QSOs. We're going to go off the activator logs just like we do for POTA.
Right.
There's no fixed exchange. There's no sequence number. You're going to get a real signal report, not a 5.9. So it's not entirely unfair to try and differentiate between this event and a contest. But how's the expression go, right? If it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck kind of a thing. This event has a start time and an end time, and we're going to declare winners and send those winners physical prizes that have monetary value. That is enough that just having a good, clean conscience says you probably should not be on the WARC bans. Gotcha. So no 12, 17, or 30 under the guise of no contesting on the WARC bans. Like whether you want to call this a contest or not, you probably, and you could certainly, only 0.4% of our QSOs or something like that were on those bans anyway. So it's a pretty small price to pay just to be a good amateur radio citizen, which is something we strive to do.
Absolutely. And the other thing would be, what about from the digital standpoint, where, I mean, I was even last night, I was able to get, my personal shack here, Ham Radio Deluxe set up, and it works with WSJTX. And, probably in half hour, I probably made 30 contacts. I mean, it was just, it takes a cycle every minute to run through a contact, but you can wrap up a ton of contacts just using FT4, FT8 versus, doing, what takes the same time to do some voice single sideband contacts. So is there any change around that?
So let's just finish up the band thing, because there's one more. Yeah. We're also not going to accept QSOs made on 60 meters, even though it's not a WARC band.
Right.
And that's not under the WARC band philosophy. That's under the equitability philosophy, because 60 meters is not a worldwide allocation.
Correct.
And even where it is, it doesn't always match. So just to keep access to the bands equitable across everybody who wants to participate in 140 countries, we're just not going to use 60 either.
Makes sense. And it's awesome that you guys are now in 140 countries. That's incredible, actually. So,
isn't it? Yeah.
That's crazy how much it's growing. And I know I keep kind of referring back to Winter Field Day, but we're also international. I mean, it's crazy how much that's growing in that regard. So it's cool to see these organizations like this just kind of have a huge outreach overall. So.
Yeah, well, the best part of it is, and I don't know if you have this as well with a Winter Field Day organization, but for Parks on the Air, for us to be in a country requires us to have a volunteer in that country to be the admin for the park database.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, because I don't have any idea what the law is around who owns and operates parks in South Korea. I know they have parks, but I don't live in South Korea. I don't know the details of the law around park administration in South Korea. So it requires someone who is there, who knows the law, who understands how the parks work, who's willing to take responsibility for maintaining the park entity database for that country.
I would have never thought about that.
So in order to be in all those countries, we had to get at least one volunteer in all of those countries. So when I say the POTA organization has grown, that's what I mean. If it's 140 countries, there's minimum 140 mapping coordinators.
Wow.
And it turns out it's way more than that because there's one for every state, or at least one for every state in the U.S. and a couple for Canada. And so I know we talk about over 100. It's more accurate to say it's probably closer to 300 people.
I would say so.
Involved in the POTA organization. So
wow.
Anyway, to answer your earlier question, no, there are no changes to digital modes. In fact, POTA continues. This is one of the things that differentiates our event from a traditional contest. In every contest I've ever seen, the modes are phone, digital, CW.
Right.
So if you make a contact on FT8 and you contact the same person on FT4, that's a dupe. It's not a dupe for POTA.
It'll be two individual contacts. So
it'll be two separate contacts, all the digital modes and all the phone modes. If we have a QSO on sideband and I go, and let's just say we were on 10 meters in an appropriate spot. And I said, hey, Marvin, you flip the mode switch over there to FM. Let's see if we can make this work on FM. And we make another QSO. That's another QSO. Sideband is different from FM.
Correct.
So we're going to continue to count all of that stuff. Well, it goes back to the idea that this is a hobby and it's supposed to be fun.
Right.
So I don't get the whole, you made a contact on sideband, so now FM doesn't count. Like, well, why? Have you ever tried it? Just because you made a contact on sideband does not mean FM is going to work. It's not a gimme. And it's the same with the digital modes, right? Just because FT8 worked does not mean PSK is going to work.
Oh, absolutely.
So I love that we let people try whatever suits their fancy, and if you can get it to work, count it.
Absolutely. I'm good with that. I think that's a great way to go as well. That's a good rule. I'm glad to keep that around. So,
well, that's what I say to people who go, you could just run down the list of modes in FL Digi and get 30 QSOs. I go, try it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think good luck with that one.
Yeah. That's easy to say. Show me that you did it, and maybe we'll have a conversation about whether this shouldn't be counted or not.
Yeah, there's too many variables out there for that not to count otherwise. So,
yeah. It's way harder than anybody thinks it is. I know, because I have tried. One of my favorite things to do is to go out to a local park, and I'll get on the repeater and drum up the club and say, okay, I'm at the park. So I'm going to start working you guys simply. Great. I'll listen to the repeater input and see who I can hear. Well, let me work you 2 meter simplex. And once I got you simplex, let's try 440. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. I happen to have 220 capability, so we'll try 220. And then okay, I'm going to 6 meters. So everybody turn on your 6 meter gear and we'll try FM, we'll try sideband, we'll try AM. Run down and do some CW. You can rack up a lot of QSOs with 2 or 3 people who happen to be bored in the afternoon. Ground wave, right? Yeah. By trying all these different modes and weirdo bands and such things. And I got into it because I'm chasing an achievement we have in POTA called the N1CC award. It's the award for working 10 different bands from 10 different parks.
Oh.
So I'm trying to rack up bands from different parks, and working local guys ground wave on bands that otherwise aren't necessarily open is a good way to do it.
Yeah. I've not heard of that award, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good one. That has strangely motivated me. In fact, I ended up building a pair of CW rigs for the 630 meter band, specifically so that I could add one more band to a couple of parks. It's complicated, right? Operating on 630 is not straightforward, and you have to go through the registration process to let the powers that be know you're going to use this band and whatever. But it is possible. I have 630 meter QSOs in the POTA database.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Yeah, I'm still trying to work on I have one local park here. I'm still trying to work on getting a kilo award for that one. So, still challenging. I've always kind of created a KM4ACK, put a challenge out about 2 years ago that, go out and operate, once a month outdoors somehow. And that kind of got me more and more doing more parks on the air and trying to go to a new park all the time. But then I thought, you know what? Why not just continue to try and do one park and make lots of contacts? And so I think I've made every month except last November and February of this year. I was not able to make that completion of those of that, but
yeah. Well, I alternate back and forth.
Not every month other than that, working parks on the air. So, yeah.
Sure. Well, and some of it depends on time. So I have two parks that are, 20 minutes away. I have a kilo at both of those parks. In fact, I have 2 kilos at the one of them. I continue to go there.
Yeah, work on your 5,000 now.
Well, right. I continue to go there simply because sometimes that's the amount of time I have. I just don't if I want to go to a new park, I'm going to have to drive an hour, and I don't have 5 hours to spend activating today. I only have an hour and a half.
Right.
I can take a long lunch. So I don't want to spend the whole thing driving. I want to be on the radio. So I go to the close park, which is the one I've been to. And that's why we have Kilo Awards, endorsements for Kilo Awards, repeat offender, and even if I only ever went to that one park, I never went to another park, I can continue to rack up the operator to operator awards and park to park counts, and they've done a pretty good job of making sure that you have benchmarks against which you can track your own personal progress, even if you don't have hundreds of parks available to you.
That is, I must say, the one thing about parks on the air, they have been very creative in terms of the number of types of awards that one can achieve by just doing parks, simple parks on the air and getting out at an event. Like you said, whether it's one park or you've gone to, several hundred parks, you definitely have different awards you can get, which is very, very cool from, people because some reason people really seem to like certificates and that sort of thing.
And a shout out to, she does a pretty good job of hiding, so I won't out her here, but it's actually Jason's wife is the one who puts together the artwork and does the design for all of those certificates and I think has significant input on, hey, this would be a good one, that would be a good one, or whatever. So, Jason gets all the credit for being the main man for POTA, but he's leaning heavily on the missus for help, and I don't blame him because she's doing a fantastic job.
Exactly, the other hidden half.
Right. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there are any other changes. I guess the only other thing, the rules about being a club haven't changed, but I don't know that they're well known. So it's a great activity. If you have a club, especially if you have a club that's struggling to come up with anything to do other than have your meetings in your nets, POTA is a fantastic way to get people out and doing something that they're going to enjoy. It's all the fun of field day and a lot less overhead.
Yeah, as most people put, what's field day every day, so...
Yeah. Well, and field day and winter field day, obviously, I mean, these are great events, but they're it's a commitment, right? If you want to participate in the entire thing, then you got to be out there for 2 days and whatever else. A POTA activation, could be a half hour.
True.
So there's an accessibility thing to it there, but for a club to participate in the plaque event, there's two things. One, you're going to have to be a real club. You're going to have right, at least 3 people, and you're going to have a club call sign with a trustee issued by the FCC or whoever your agency is.
Right.
You cannot just round up a couple of people and go get a special event call sign and think you're going to compete as a club in the plaque event. We're not going to accept that. Our goal is to foster clubs and club activity, because I continue to firmly believe that active, healthy clubs are good for ham radio.
Could a club get a special call sign for the event?
They could, but please don't.
Okay.
Please don't. We don't want POTA activations.
People will be creative and come up with all kinds of stuff. So I just if you prefer people don't. It's good to let people know that. So
we don't want POTA activations to become special events. They're not.
Right.
They're de-expeditions is what they are. They're de-expeditions, little mini de-expeditions. So. And I'm sure the people handing out the special event call signs don't want POTA activations to become special events.
No.
And we don't really want them to become special events. Now, the flip is okay. Here's an example. The club that I belong to locally happens to be having their 50th anniversary this year in 2023.
Right.
So we're going to go get a special event call sign for a week to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the club.
Good cause.
And we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff during the week under that special event call sign. One of the things we're going to do is POTA activation. But that's a case where we got a special event call sign for an actual special event, and we happen to be doing POTA as part of the whole grander thing.
Yep.
We're not trying to turn the POTA activation into a special event.
Makes sense. So.
And I know that sounds like legalistic mumbo jumbo and hair splitting, but it really is different.
I totally agree with that. Absolutely. So, well, great, Matt. I really appreciate you coming on, this morning. I think you may have another event as well to attend and whatnot to potentially, but I just want to say thanks for coming on to the Ham Radio Guy podcast here this morning, and just appreciate all the information you've shared about Parks on the Air. And I guess, where can people go find out more information about this event, and how do they, if they have any questions, what do they need to do?
Your best bet for information is to go to the POTA.app website, and that is POTA.app. That is a website, that is not an app in the app store. So Safari, Chrome, Firefox, whatever your browser is. Under the menu system there's a documentation area where all of this is laid out. And in order to participate in the plaque event, you will need to be a registered POTA account holder. So luckily, you're already in the right place to do that if you're not already signed up.
Absolutely.
And if you do have any specific questions about the event or POTA in general, there's an email address, help@parksontheair.com. You can email them, and it's a great bunch of volunteers who field an awful lot of email questions about POTA, the plaque event et al. So feel free to email them at any time if you have POTA questions.
Sure. And I know there'll be a staff at Hamvention, which is, May 19th and 20th. And they, I'm sure, will be able to help you just prior to that event, also help you if you're attending Hamvention in Dayton. There'll be staff at the POTA booth at the Hamvention there. They'll be able to help you set that up and be right there on the website. And they have a computer there where they can help you get logged in and signed up for POTA as well, or Parks on the Air. So feel free to reach out to them while you're there on site.
The POTA booth. POTA booth will be in the same spot it was in last year, for those of you who attended last year. And I got an invite to do a POTA talk for the forums. So Saturday at 12:10, just afternoon, in Forum 2 will be the Parks on the Air session.
All right. Perfect.
And I believe that's breaking news here. So you got the scoop on that one.
Got the scoop on that one. That's great. That's awesome.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much. So if you're going to be at Hamvention this year, like I said, need help with Parks on the Air, they can help you at the POTA booth, and then also listen to Matt here on Saturday, 12:10 at the Hamvention of Forum 2 room. Matt, it's a pleasure speaking with you this morning. Thank you for everything. And we'll definitely have some other conversations outside of here for some other relationship building down the road as well. But I just want to say thank you for coming on this morning and being part of this. And we'll be in touch again soon.
Happy to do it, Marvin. Yeah, and I'm sure we can come up with. There's lots of overlap in gear and motives and such things between POTA and Winter Field Day. So I'm sure we will meet again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Good enough.
Have a good one and enjoy your Saturday. And I say 73.
7-3.
All right. Well, that brings this part of the show to a wrap. Again, that was Matt Neere, just like John Deere, I think he said, N3NWV. And that will kind of get us through the plaque event. Hopefully that was something that you were able to learn a little bit about and what that's going to consist of and go chase that award. Come June 3rd and 4th. So, from here, we'll move into a little bit of news and talk a little bit more about a couple of other things here. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was the article I came across on Amateur Radio Weekly. And this was a article talking about Bouvet Island. The article was from EI7GL. And he was talking about basically the cost of the expedition for 3Y0J. And this has been one of the biggest and most expensive expeditions in recent times. I think this was also previously done like maybe 2005, 2007, something like that. And this island is located in the South Atlantic. The initial plan was to have, 12 stations and make like 200,000 contacts while they were there for the month of February here in 2023. And I think they encountered a lot of difficulty getting the equipment onto the island due to the rough seas, and were only able to operate a few stations and make a significantly less contacts than they anticipated. In fact, they only made a little over 18,000 contacts, which is only like 9% of their target of the 200,000. And so it seems like a huge amount of money for the little bit of contact that they made on this island for this expedition. And so, he wasn't sure if all the money was spent, everything else, but if it was, it comes out to be like $38 a QSL, which is, pretty expensive overall. And, that was, kind of the whole matter of the article. But he did come across something that was said in a comment, was talking about DQRM. And I was like, DQRM? I've not heard what that is. So I went and did a little research around it and looked it up and found out that it's basically a lot of QRM on HF, but this is more targeted towards expeditions. And apparently on many expeditions, as much as we hear it on local repeaters, and we'll hear it on AF from time to time, is those people that have the malicious and intentful interference with making noises and radio and everything else on the different HF or local repeaters. And so there's also a group out there that will do the same malicious intent to interrupt and interfere with a expedition. And so there's apparently a worldwide effort to try and triangulate and narrow down and eliminate those people who are doing this. And that was a lot of the problems that was encountered apparently with the Bouvet Island expedition this time. And so it was one of those things that, started thinking about. It was like, well, will this interfere with, future expeditions and does this make a challenge for others who want to go out and do this because this is something they, it's out of their control, but yet they, want to be able to get out to those rare and targeted areas. And so, when you have such an event planned like that, and the amount of money that's invested in it, and you have these malicious stations causing a problem with future DXs, is that something that they're going to, want to be able to do? And so it was just kind of interesting talking about DQRM and having that interference happen on DXpeditions, and which I never would have thought of, and kind of given the results of the Bouvet Island as well, knowing that it was worldwide, the expectation and the expected contacts to be made with that was much more significant lower than they anticipated. So that was kind of the update on the Bouvet Island, and again, something I kind of learned a little bit about myself called DQRM, with more specifically for DXpeditions. And with that, I'm going to move right into some news. In the ARRL this year, this is the year of the volunteer for ARRL. And they're encouraging operators from around the world to make contacts with designated point givers. And point givers are consisting of ARRL members, the board, all the staff, and they have different points that you can earn. You can check out more about this at vota.arrl to find out more today. You can find out the leaderboard, the list of activations, and rules of the site. This event is using Logbook of the World to log all of the contacts. Get on the air today and start earning your points with the Volunteers of the Year for ARRL. In other news, amateur radio operators throughout the world whose lives have been touched by autism are going to be getting on the air to help raise awareness of autism spectrum disorder during World Autism Awareness Week between March 25th and April 2nd. Operators will be looking to log stations using any mode of their choice with the goal of directing successful contacts to the events page on QRZ.com. This is all about education. Amateurs in the United States will be using the call W2A. I want to remind the listeners that young hams who live in the continental United States will have an opportunity to make news. If they're not already doing so by being the recipient of this year's Amateur Radio Newsline Bill Pasternak Memorial Young Ham of the Year Award, consider nominating an amateur radio operator 18 years or age or younger as someone who has talent, promise, and a commitment to the spirit of ham radio. Find out application forms on our website, arnewsline.org, under the YHOTY tab. Nominations are open May 1st and close May 31st. So go out and grab your application today and get that filled out for the Young Ham of the Year Award. All my news is sourced from the ARRL News, Updates, and Amateur Radio Newsline. And to some final things before we wrap the show up here is some Hamfest. Just a reminder, all my Hamfest that I list here are typically in the Delta Division. Check out ARRL Hamfest schedule page for local Hamfest near you. The Tullahoma Hamfest in Tennessee will be March 11th, 2023. Sevierville will be March 18th, which is out near Pigeon Forge. Gatlinburg area, always a wonderful area to go visit. A beautiful area out there in the mountains as well. Corinth, Mississippi, April 1st. That is no April Fools. Greenville, Tennessee. Not sure exactly where that one's at. It'll be on March 15th. 2023. And of course, QSO Today Hamfest will be online from March 25th through the 26th. Well, that brings this show to a close this week, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll submit your subscribe button and share with friends, and hope that you learned something as well this week that will help you in your ham radio operations. If you would like to help support the channel and become a patron, look for me on buymeacoffee.com/thehamradioguy to join today. As always, this is your ham radio buddy in the chair and on the air, the ham radio guy. I say 73 W0 MET.